Good evening to all of you, and welcome to this paper development session, the second one that we are having today. I'll take you through what we did in the last session, in the first paper development session, very briefly, and then build up a little bit on the methodology and how it is different from the standard approaches we follow. And the main part of it will be done by Professor Devdutt Panda on specific methods and techniques, tools that are typically used in systems approach to understanding, diagnosing, or solving problems. So welcome to this session, and hope that it's going to be useful for all of you. So in the last session, as we talked about, the design is this way, that we have the tracks and topics, that those are the design issues that we have. Of course, it's not the full list, it is a tentative list. And we have, if you go deeper inside, you look at the methodology, as well as the methodology has a philosophy. And specific to the AISS, that is All Interacting Evolving System Science, it's a part of system science, but it has very specific philosophy. But today's focus would be on methodology. And once the methodology is clear, the strategy for action also becomes a little more clear and more coherent. And then that gets into subsequently the action or iterative processes. But today's session, as we have already outlined, is to look at methodology and methods. And these are the different topics that are there. And when we look at systems approach to these phenomena, we typically adopt a kind of looking at the relationships or interactions between the factors in different domains. So it crosses one discipline and gets into multiple disciplines, as we saw last time through an example that how a particular policy would work or not work. For instance, the ODOP, one district, one product policy of the government, when you project it to production, then marketing strategies, and then to governance, they all kind of gives clarity on whether it's going to work or there'll be a lack of coherence among these factors and variables, and hence either it may work or it may not work. So that's how we attempt to look at the complex problems or complexities that we typically encounter in reality. So these were some of the things that we discussed, and one of them we discussed is, of course, the case of agricultural sector as part of our understanding how systems work. So the typical approach that we have is the disciplinary approach. So we have several disciplines, whether it is in the field of economic or political science or sociology or environment or nature, or physics, chemistry, biology, all of these. And each of these critical pillars have different subjects. And more than these subjects, of course, there are many more fields that we study. But the approach of most of the work that we have is reductionist, and therefore it is basically disciplinary in nature. So most of the work are of that type. Of course, there have been a lot of improvements that we see in the approach to understand the phenomena, but this is one way of looking at how disciplines work. But we also know that reality is not so linear. They are embedded. That one issue is embedded with the other. So if you want to improve economic conditions, maybe you have to work on the political side, you might have to work on the social side, or you might have to work on the environmental side. And that's how the sustainable development goals have been kind of visualized, that they are a negotiation of these different pillars. And going further from sustainability, we say that they are not just negotiated, but they're embedded with each other. So they're complementary, they're supporting each other. So they have a priority of their embeddedness, but there is an embeddedness, and they're not linear in nature. So this is where the reality is. And if this were the reality, we have to then investigate on the appropriate methodology to understand and solve problems of that reality. And that's how this systems methodology comes in place. So this is where, when we have this embeddedness in the different dimensions and different pillars, we see that the approach that we go into is systems approach, or transdisciplinary approach. And transdisciplinary is already takes into account the system's perspective into the analysis. So this is a new field that you would have seen, that it is an evolving field of methodology, which is becoming most prominent. So if you look at broadly the methodology that we have, we study, we use, these are the broad methodologies that we have. And we have, of course, each methodology has specific methods, tools, techniques, methods of data collection, and methods of data analysis. Please make this distinction that methods can be both quantitative and qualitative. Methodology do not per se is quantitative or qualitative. Methodology is a methodology, a framework of analyzing a phenomena, but within that there are both quantitative methods and qualitative methods. So quantitative methods of data collection and quantitative methods of data analysis. So same way applies all kinds of techniques that we have. So so if we look at these different methodologies, whether it may be historical or survey as a methodology or grounded theory or case or ethnography, these are the standard methodologies we have used so far and most prominently used in social sciences that we see. And what we then see is in the physical sciences, you see it's always this case of experiments. These are typically stimulus response, stimulus approaches, which is what we have also started trying out in social sciences called the action research. And of course, the latest, as I already said, is the transdisciplinary research. But between this, there are many other methodologies that has emerged: multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, intersectional approaches, and so many different types. And further, if you take systems approach and TD further into really making it work, we're not expecting that all of us in this conference will be using all this, but to be aware of the different methodologies and to see the boundaries of where I am kind of trying my problem or analyzing my problem, whether it's a problem, diagnosing a problem, or giving a solution to the problem, what is my model, just to get a sense of where I am pissed. For that purpose, I'm just saying this broad set of methodologies. So there are many more, or there are more specific methodologies, and we have the systems-based action research, or it can be systems-based transdisciplinary action research, or ecosystemic transdisciplinary action research. I'll share a paper on this for those of you who are interested. You can see that later. But what it basically says is that the differences between these different methodologies is rooted on, or can be distinguished from, the orientation, the nature of reality, the purpose it serves, the nature of data, and nature of data collection. So the orientation in one is mostly anthropocentric, that is human being centered, whereas the other, on the other side, it is ecosystemic. And same way, the nature of reality that one looks at on one end is dualistic and static, whereas the other end, we see reality as non-dualistic and dynamic. Likewise, the purpose of a particular research could be problem measurement on one end. On the other end, it is problem solving. So one part is diagnosis. It is about knowledge seeking. So it can be reductionist. On the other side, at the other extreme, could be synthesis or solution seeking. But before going into synthesis and solution seeking, you also need diagnosis. We must understand that as well. They are complementary. It's not to say that this or this, but at times you need a mix of these different things to understand deeper dynamics of a phenomenon. The nature of data, on one end, you see is data is frozen in time and space. On the other end, if it is non-dualistic and dynamic, the data also keeps evolving. And therefore, the nature of data collection on one side is ethic, that you are an outsider to the phenomena. You go and collect data like a historical study. You are not part of the history when the events were happening, but you're going and collecting data after the event is over. Whereas in an action research or the ecosystemic transdisciplinary action research, you would actually be part of the problem and part of the system, and at the same time influencing the system and collecting the data. So it's very, very complex. That's when it becomes challenging to actually give the kind of scientific approach that we have, the standard approach that we tend to have at the moment. So each of these, of course, what you see is the philosophy of science, which is what we are not going there today, but primarily you can see the methodology, epistemology, logic, and axiology of these different methodologies are by themselves have uniqueness. So one has to be aware of the philosophy of science for each of these methodologies. But this is where AISS actually comes in. The pure all interacting evolving systems actually follows this ecosystemic transdisciplinary action research. And I, again, would like to tell that we are not expecting all papers in this conference to have that one end of the spectrum. We can have many, but to just be aware that what are the boundaries. And of course, Professor Devdutt would actually give us more specific nuances on how we can apply or use different systems approaches, the techniques, tools to actually write our papers for this conference. And particularly because there are journals, one of the top systems research journal would actually look for, if you are thinking of that, some kind of considering or your paper to be considered by the journal, which is tied up with the conference, you have to take care of some of these methods and techniques. So what happens, I'll broadly quickly show you if this is agricultural sector and these are 5 factors, and these are the 5 topics that are given under primary production for the conference. And one can choose a set of variables on one end or the other end, and it will produce different kind of cycles. It will produce, one is of course industrial agriculture, the other is regenerative agriculture, and they would produce different kind of cycles. And of course, this is too complex. Professor Dev would actually simplify it for us to understand how we can see the cyclic nature of the relationality of the variables. And on the other hand, it can produce a different cyclic effect, and they have different outcomes in the process. So this is to tell you that, well, they really produce wonderful results in practice if you follow the systems approach and understand complexity better. So this is one of the examples which we have been able to successfully do using systems and systems approach and the action research approach in getting here. So just to give you that, it is really very, very kind of effective methodology to problem solving, not only problem diagnosis, but also problem solving. I would stop here and request Professor Dev to take us forward in these methods and techniques of systems approach. Yeah.
So before going to the methodology, let me simplify what a system is. So how do you look at a system? The system can be understood through a computer, where we have got the hardware, the software. So when you look at a computer, we have got the input, we have got the output devices, we have got the processing devices, the software and the hardware. And what the system is, the systems thinking or the systems approach is, when you look at everything, all these elements, when they work in tandem, and then we get a result. That's called a system. Instead of looking at a part of the system, when you look at the entire system, how they work together is called the systems approach. So from there, if you look at in an organization, there are different departments, and when these departments work together, the organization works. That's called a system. Similarly, when you talk about the ecosystem, we got the Himalayan ecosystem, which would be different from the savanna ecosystem. The flora, fauna, they're interdependent. The food chain, this is called an ecosystem. And there are various approaches to the systems research. One school of thought is called the systems thinking. The focus of systems thinking is understanding the complex system as a interconnected and interdependent entities. And it emphasizes on interrelationships and interactions. The dominant methods used in the systems thinking are the qualitative methods. Of course, there are quantitative methods, applied in the system thinking, but the dominant methods are the qualitative tools and techniques. And the applications is done to understand. So to understand how to improve a complex systems, how to approach a complex system. The system thinking is a broad mindset and conceptual framework used to understand how different parts of the system interact and influence one another. It focuses on the qualitative reasoning about a cause and effect relationship and a feedback loop. The key elements of the systems thinking are the holistic view or holism. It looks the entire system rather than the isolated parts. And as I said, the approach, broadly qualitative approach, focuses on the relationship, conceptual models, and interactions. There's a causal loop diagrams, the causal loop diagrams that interconnect different parts. Uses a diagram to visualize the feedback loop and interdependencies, and it's interdisciplinary, applied in environment, in business, in education, healthcare, and policymaking. And it focuses on the learning and understanding. It aims to shift the perspective and improve decision making. The examples can be studying human impact on the ecosystems and sustainability. If you look at a systems model and the systems thinking, you can see there is an input, the raw material, the human resource, the capital, technology, or information, and the input get transformed through a process, and further the process lead to the output, and the output provides feedback to the input, and the process goes on. There is an external environment that influence the input and output. So this is broadly called the systems thinking. You can visualize the McKinsey 7S model as a systems thinking. See how the structures, the organizational systems, the styles, staff, skills, and shared values are interconnected. They work in tandem, they jointly work, and each one is impacting others. The other field of systems thinking, systems approach, is the system dynamics. And it is more specific to the modeling methodology. And it involves the mathematical questions and simulations to study the system behavior over time. It quantifies the stock and flow diagrams of the feedback loop to analyze how changes in one part of a system impact the whole. Broadly, it's quantitative and simulation based. Uses differential equations and computer modeling. An example of the system dynamics could be the stock and flow diagram. It represent how resources accumulate and change over time. It is more predictive. When systems thinking is more conceptual, the system dynamic is more predictive, can simulate a different scenario and policies. It's used for decision making and policy formulation. It helps in testing interventions before implementations. And examples of the application of the system dynamics could be simulating the carbon emission or deforestation and resource depletion over time. This is a system dynamics model. Now you can look at, there are so many elements and each one would be impacting the other. For example, the perceived compatibility of the stakeholder view would be impacting on consensus on ST model. So you'll be seeing that each one would be either getting influenced or influencing others. This is how the system dynamic model. We have to identify the different actions and reactions, the actors involved, and how they influence, how they impact and getting impacted in the whole system. This is another system dynamic model where you'll be seeing so it's a crop yield and income and agricultural water demand and conjunctive use, the causal lining and the seepage, and you'll be seeing there are so many activities are being interdependent. The third methodology is third approach is called the systems soft system methodology, and the soft system methodology also a qualitative approach, although there are instances of the quantitative applications. And they used to analyze. This approach is used to analyze and solve complex human-centered problems. Generally, it's called the soft system methodology. It's a behavioral system, and where multiple perspectives exist, unlike the traditional system method that focuses on the structured technical problems. The soft system methodology deals with the soft problems like situations where objectives are unclear, the stakeholders have conflicting viewpoints, and the solutions are not purely technical. It focuses on the human and social systems used in ecology, business, management, healthcare, education, social policy. Iterative and participatory approach engage the stakeholder to explore different perspectives. Conceptual modeling, design a feedback loop based model that explain the real world issues with ideal solutions, and it emphasizes on the learning and understanding. It helps in improving the decision making rather than providing a single correct answer. This is an example of a subsystem methodology. It's a human system. Like the input is need, value, belief, interest, intention, motivations, and how they impact on the cognitive ability, receptibility, and adaptability is a process, and that lead to an output called as social behavior, psychological behavior, economical behavior, and ecological behavior. And there are feedback. The output is providing feedback, and the process continues. And there are sociocultural political environment of the villages, the institutional environment of villages, the policy environment, the macroeconomic environment. All are getting influenced or influenced in some way. If you look at, if you compare the different approaches, the systems thinking best used for understanding the cause-effect relationship and uses applies or engages qualitative methods. System dynamics, it's simulating system behavior over time, broadly quantitative in nature. The soft system methodology, it addresses human, social, and organizational complexity, broadly qualitatives, and the hard system approach, engineering and optimization problems. They are quantitative and use operations research. As Professor Amar was talking about the qualitative methods in the beginning, one method that used in systems research is a case study approach. So there are two philosophies of the case study research. One philosophy says that you can take a case over time, a single organization, single issue, or single phenomena over time, or a single context over time, and study in depth. Versus the other approach says that you can consider few contexts and compare and contrast. So this is the case study research. The second is the ethnographic studies. As Professor Amar was talking about the grounded theory and ethnographic studies, there is a difference in that. There is a boundary to that. The grounded theory applies where you don't have significant literature, and then the researcher is observing a phenomenon and trying to understand what it is, and what it does is collecting data, analyzing, then reviewing literature. So it's an iterative way, and it generates theory, and from there, it the researchers they come out with a structural framework. Versus a ethnographic study, it's like a traditional format where the literature review will be done before then a research gap would be identified, then various methods would be applied to conduct the research. Then an action research is a collaborative and participatory approach that involves the stakeholders in the research process, where the researcher himself is the part of the phenomena. And the data collection can be multiple methods using the structural and unstructured and unstructured discussions, participant observations, interviews, focus group discussions, capturing narratives in stories. There are various methods used in the qualitative. One is called a thematic analysis. The thematic analysis is when you get the raw data that need to be condensed to some meaningful themes through a coding process. The raw data would be coded, the code should be categorized, and again, the categories should be recategorized to form the themes. Similarly, another method is the content analysis, where the repeated code should be identified, and then a theory would be developed. The frequency of the code should be identified. Bit of statistics should be used. Then we have the discourse analysis that involves analyze how people talk, how people narrate, and from there identify meaningful themes or meaningful theories. As I said, there are various ways of doing participant doing and pulling the data. Also, of course, there are digital data sets, like people now, researchers now pulling data from Facebook or YouTube or any digital content. Also apply the coding process to reduce the content to meaningful themes. So in quantitative modeling, quantitative methods, we got the modeling, and in modeling it involves the models, modeling systems as collection of individual agents and interact based on predefined rules. These are useful for studying emergent behavior in social and economic systems. And in quantitative, we got the optimization techniques. It includes the linear programming, the genetic algorithms, and machine learning for optimizing system performance, broadly used in engineering, operations research, and AI-driven decision making. Also, it applies the statistical and empirical analysis. It engages regressions and hypothesis testing to analyze the system data. Yeah, that's all from my side. And over to Professor Amar.
Thanks, Dave. So we are kind of just about shared some of the initial thoughts on the methodology and methods of systems research. So now we can get into discussion. I would invite my colleagues, any of you like to give your comments to begin with, and then we can go into clarifications and questions.
Hello. Yeah, it's always refreshing to see different applications and to think through how we might take what we've worked on thus far to the next level and to the next step. So I've been jotting some valuable notes and printing off Deb's slides. So will that presentation be available to us?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, we have Rajiv, Bhaskar, want to comment anything before we open it up?
Yes, I think it is very well articulated in terms of the broad methodologies. So depending on the area in which you are working, probably the people, the participants who are working on system thinking and actually think about maybe while you start a problem, you can think about a soft system methodology, right? Because you have much less data in quantitative terms available with us. So maybe like telling a story, right? So the storytelling format is what we would say generally in qualitative research without going to a theory or anything. Just tell the story as to how all these events are connected. And subsequently, maybe you can put it in terms of variables and maybe think about collecting data. So So those who are probably starting with the research can think about soft systems methodology, group model building exercises, and those kind of things. And that itself will bring out a lot of information. And subsequently, we can move to quantitative research. Right. That's what I felt.
Thank you.
Perfect. That's right.
So let me add one or 2 points. The idea of storytelling, it can be a very simple story where that could be more of a narrative without a direction or a kind of clear plan. But some of the best stories are done after very extensive research. So there are 2 ways to look at the same story. So stories are told, or stories are in the initial stages could be very broad. We may not have confirmed, but it could be more of a narrative. But some of the powerful stories are based on very intense research. So both aspects of storytelling exist. Storytelling, some of the best movies, for instance, are based on extensive research. They are stories, but they're done with a lot of groundwork. So don't take storytelling as always a simple narrative. It's at different levels that one can tell stories. But that's a good way to start, as Rajiv mentioned. So that's just to explore what could be a possible way to understand a phenomenon. Yes, Professor Patra.
Yeah, I was seeing the presentation by Mr. Dev. So he has given some good idea for the young researchers that how should they proceed, so that the paper they want to contribute is qualitative. And particularly me, I had a lot of data when I'm associated with some of the organizations. This qualitative, quantitative approach we know, but then the presentation that he shared and the points that he spoke will be useful to me, and I think those who have joined here and others later on. So this I will discuss with my colleagues, and the presentation that you have made also I will share with them and try to fine tune the large area that we are covering in the industrial ecosystem. And I will try to concise and then draw meaningful conclusions along with the methodology that you have suggested, and we will add something. So that will give a broad as well as an intensive approach, and we will be able to contribute to the conference in terms of how things are regenerative with the industries and the peripheral areas. So I think it's worth to listen to Mr. Dev. Thank you, Mr. Dev.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dev. It was actually, I got to understand the systems methodology by what you explained. Just a little clarification, if I say. So when we talk about systems thinking and systems dynamics, so in dynamics, you showed those loops, the interrelated loops, the figures that you showed. Similarly, systems thinking is also about interconnected and interdependency that we talked about. So how do we depict the systems thinking diagram different from the system dynamic one that you showed?
Systems thinking is conceptual,
Okay.
and system dynamic is predictive. We test it. So you can say the concept that you develop, the model that we develop, that not has been tested in systems thinking. This is what the difference. When we simulate through data,
Okay.
when we come out with a structural model, when we simulate with data, then we get the positive impact, negative impact, how they impact. This is dynamics.
Okay.
Yeah, here I would like to add that when you have long time series data,
Right.
while doing the modeling, if you use the last 10 years of data and see the trend and calibrate and validate it, then whatever modeling we do, we can predict it to the future, and with confidence we can present in our paper that this is what has happened in the last 10 years or 15 years, then it is going to happen in coming few years. I am going to present in my paper the scenario till 2036, which is there. The present government is claiming that we will have a Bikasit or developed Odisha kind of thing. So I am trying to utilize some of the past data sets on different aspects of particularly water quality, water quantity, water availability, how things are changing, their demand is increasing, and how they are using the regenerative approach. I'll just share 1 or 2 points. You'll be happy to know. There is a common perception that groundwater is depleting with the Andhra West Bengal. But in many places, we had an interaction with both the state groundwater directorate and the central groundwater board. They indicated that the groundwater level is increasing in spite of number of tube wells, bore wells, etc. being constructed. Then we attributed to that there is a source, there is a sink. So we have a lot of check dams built, a lot of reservoirs built, medium projects, large projects, and a lot of barrages are coming up like in-stream structures. So huge quantity of water is getting recharged. That is why Odisha can say that we are not depleting our water resources. It is regenerative, the true sense. And it is based on data collected over 1,500 stations, hydrometer stations, and over a long period of time. That too, 4 times in a year, pre-monsoon, post-monsoon, and in between some period. And similarly, water quality data we are getting, if there is any deterioration anywhere, we try to attribute to some nearby streams which is polluted, or some urban dump sites where there is leaching during the monsoon and that gets polluted. All these aspects are possible once you take the modeling approach and do it, provided that we have the data. If you have no data, then we have to resort to qualitative method. Somebody has made very simplified. It is storytelling. It's not storytelling. It's a research method applied in certain circumstances. And that also gives a deep insight that what is happening and how we should carry it further as kind of a mitigation action or remedial action or improvement in the ecosystem generation concept. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a hand from Rahul.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to Sumita ma'am's query. So, Sumita ma'am, she was inquiring about how the system thinking models may be different from the system dynamics models. Now, system thinking models, there are softwares based on which you can actually create and visualize those. Like, for example, there are softwares like Vensim, there are softwares like Stellas, I think. Now, system thinking models are primarily represented through causal loop diagrams, which are more at a very high level to demonstrate the feedback structures that may be affecting a system. Now, if you try to go into the system dynamics models, which can be simulated, so for that you have to actually create stock and flow diagrams, which are more detailed version of the causal loop diagrams, which can be created again using the same softwares like Vensim, I think, etc. So what the difference between this is system thinking models broadly tells you the theory about the phenomena that you are trying to explain. And if you get into the nitty-gritties of what exactly is taking place and how to actually realize this phenomena by simulating the phenomena towards arriving at policy issues, then you have to use those corresponding softwares and create a simulatable model and then simulate based on the data which the expert just indicated.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Further, in this direction, I think we have got experienced professors and who have been doing it and teaching all this. So if some of the researchers would like to contribute and take their guidance, I think they should be open to guide, whether Professor Thakuria, Professor Dev, who has spoken. So maybe at certain level, when they start working, they may get stuck up and they may probably receive guidance from both of you. That's why I would like to request here.
You are always welcome.
Professor Rahul, I just wanted to ask one thing. Do we have this software tool like Vensim or Stella or AnyLogic in our computer lab, or
It's
You are
available for
using you are using business dynamics also as a specialization elective, so we should be having that access also, isn't it?
Yeah, it's available. That means the IT help desk knows about it.
Hmm.
They can be able to provide.
Yeah.
I
Yes,
think,
yes.
madam.
Let's take.
Good evening, Professor. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So I've already presented one paper at IIM Sambalpur, which is basically, I think today when Professor Deb said, I realized it is somewhere in systems thinking stage. So for this particular conference that is being organized by you all, I think I want to take it from systems thinking to systems dynamic, which is something new that I heard today. And I wish Dr. Deb could suggest some papers so that we can read a little more and figure where we can place that. So I present a conceptual model based on relationship as a dimension, which I have taken from Professor Amar's paper itself. Which talks about, so I've used it in the context of used fashion, and I'm trying to see how in context, how do the young generation perceive used fashion. So this came up as a concept of teaching in the class, where I realized that Indian children are not kind of ready to use used fashion even now, whereas the foreign literature talks about a lot of used fashion being accepted by young generation. So I really don't know where to fit in, whether it's systems thinking or whether I should now move to systems dynamic. Something that I had doubt about. So if you could share materials, I think it will be really nice.
Thank you, madam. There are two journals, very high-ranked journals. One journal is Systems Thinking and Behavioral Research. This is the journal is also partnering to our conference. This is a A-ranked journal. The Systems Thinking and Behavioral Science is broadly focuses on the systems thinking.
Oh.
So you'll get a larger number of papers on the systems thinking and the soft system methodologies. And another journal, a very specialized journal called the System Dynamic Review. System Dynamic Review. So the system dynamics, you will be seeing that the system dynamic journal generally do not accept the systems thinking. Their focus is dynamics, predictive modeling. So you'll get to know that the various forms of methodological various methodological approaches, various conceptual building processes in both the cases.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot.
Another also you can refer very simple book by Professor P.K.J. Mahapatra. Is the one you can say father of India system dynamics.
Yes.
And that is Introduction to System Dynamics Modeling by P.K.J. Mahapatra. It is available in Amazon also.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very simple way he explained.
Okay.
And you can refer that book. You will get the idea actually how to develop and all these things. What is the system dynamics? How it will be related to, example is rate of population is increasing. How it is going, population rate and death rate. How it is going to impact GDP rate. Well, it's like that. So with respect to, you will get idea wise by taking simple example actually.
Sure.
Then you will develop your model based upon that.
Yeah, thank you, Professor.
Another journal, madam, on the general systems. So in the systems also you will be getting various sub-areas. So the name of the journal is Journal of General Systems. A journal or international journal, I just forgot. International Journal of General Systems, I think.
Sure, Professor. Thank you.
Great. There are some observations in the chat box. Dave, would you see it? Or Rahul, any of you can just see? I'm curious to learn about best practices for combining qualitative and quantitative methods with systems methodology. Are there specific frameworks or strategies that you find effective for integration?
Yes. there are mixed methods. Even the system dynamic, when you go to the system dynamic, through the systems thinking, we are applying the qualitative for the system thinking to develop the conceptual model. Then further, you are applying the quantitative method to validate it. So there are mixed methods, and you can get these mixed method papers in the system dynamics review.
Okay, this second question, how likely is it for us this time to get our papers published by the partner journals? Well, the Journal on Systems Research and Systems Behavior is slotting for 27. I think it's September 27. So there's a long queue there, but it will depend on, of course, the reviewers and how whether it matches the quality of the journal. So that could be as long as that. Of course, the other general reduction, Professor Sarath would be able to comment on that.
So I have an addition to what Professor Amar said. I think even if the paper is presented in the conference, after presentation also, when the paper is going for the systems thinking and behavioral research journal, this has to be a blind peer review again as per the journal requirement. Therefore, it has to go through multiple review process before it gets published.
That's why 27 is a decent time period.
But Sarath can, speak out on the Vilakshan part at least.
Election also same thing. We are also having same process. Depends upon the quality and the area basically people are referring to. So if that is not an issue, it is basically we are having lead time will be very less and that will be not an issue. But perspective is the quality that matters to us as well. Our journal mostly that considers as like Emerald published or it considers the quality angle. So those who are considering whether it is a qualitative, quantitative, that does not matter. So mostly if you are writing pattern and also you have considered one of the technique what we have discussed today, that is useful and that will be we are accepting that types of paper.
By the way, Sarath is the editor of that journal. So we are lucky to have him on board this panel.
I think, Sarath, you can also specify that if you get enough good quality papers, you can come up with a special issue also.
Yeah, that is we are publishing in the special issue only. That is the case. It will be as like 2 journals till now we have decided. So all are related to special issues.
Another chat question, Professor Amar.
Yes. Yes. Will an ISBN number be assigned to the conference proceedings? We have Springer Nature already
book,
tied
yeah.
up. They have already published 2 of our last conference works. That would get the ISBN. We don't want to go with the conference proceeding with ISBN. So, in fact, that book has drawn the attention of Commonwealth nation, and day after we have a symposium based on the last conference book. So that's also, so we won't have for the preceding ISBN, but we may go into the book, which will of course have enough. Yes,
Yeah, that's right.
is also possible anyway.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Please.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, my question may sound a bit like very basic question, but nevertheless, I will clarify. Actually, Devdutt sir's presentation, when I saw that action research also, which is qualitative, and it can be also a part of the system methodology.
Right.
Is that right, sir? My understanding is right. What I have understood is that action research is mostly is short term, and also it gives the results immediately, or which can be implemented immediately, say within a 6 months time or 1 year time. Whereas system dynamics and system thinking, system dynamics is more about prediction or predictive nature, like the time is different. It may take more time, what I understand. So how it fits in Axon research, how it fits into system thinking methodology?
Axon research is one of the method.
Yes, yes, sir.
One of the method to gather
Yes.
data, to gather information, analyze the
Uh-huh.
information. And once you use the systems approach, is what you have a problem, then you are trying to understand the problem through various actions and interactions.
Hmm.
Right? So in action research, where the participant himself is one among, is a part of the contest. In other form of research, a researcher is not in the contest. Researcher identify pool data, then use a scientific method to analyze the data, come out with some meaningful theories, outcome. But in action research, the participant himself embed himself with the contest. So this is a method of pulling data.
Okay.
So in action research, you can go ahead with the system thinking, you can go ahead with the system dynamics, you can go ahead with the soft system thinking, soft systems modeling.
Okay. Oh, that means in case of system dynamics, time is not a factor. Time is not taken as a factor.
No,
Okay.
time.
Time you will consider. It does not matter that it will be long or short. Basically, with respect to time,
Okay,
dynamic
okay.
itself is with respect to time. Dynamic means
yes.
what? With respect to time only.
It keeps changing.
Yeah, that is dynamic names itself reflecting time.
Okay.
So how without time you will be going to moving on? That is time with respect to time. How your behavior or respect process is changing.
Okay.
That will be used simulate basically. Simulation it is basically.
Okay. So it doesn't matter whether it takes a 6 months time or 1 year time. So in case of action research also, we can apply that systems thinking. Is that right, sir? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I would like to clarify further the concept of action research, giving examples of my own work in my own domain.
Sir.
Suppose I take an irrigation system. It's very complex.
Sir.
Farmers are there. The soil is different. Climate is uncertain. Crops are to be grown. If a researcher works in a university or somewhere, he will prescribe something based on certain research. But when you work with a live system, canals are flowing, water is going or not going, farmers are applying to the field efficiently or inefficiently. That's what Professor Dev was telling. Once we do the research with the stakeholders and do it, suppose if I talk irrigation, it could be 2 crops, Kharif and Rabi. It could be 2 Kharif and 2 Rabi, 2 years. Then we can say with certainty, the researcher can say that this is what I have done with the live system, with all the partners and processes and factors and influence environmental things into consideration. And this is my result. So this gives a more confidence to the policymakers instead of doing a research in an academic environment. That's how the action research that has been coming up, and many people are applying it. And it has its own strength and it's good reasons to do that.
Yes.
Every research question have a research methodology. So this kind of scenario which I describe is like that. Same thing as Professor Amaratam we used to talk. Once you go to a Gram Panchayat, many factors are there. There are political parties. Each Gram Panchayat is different from another Gram Panchayat. There are a lot of dynamics inside. So certain things may click in another Gram Panchayat may not click. So it cannot be prescribed universally. So that's how the action research comes up. Things which will come up in Kerala or West Bengal cannot come up in Odisha or Andhra Pradesh. Because Kerala and West Bengal, due to long of the leftist government, their things are more matured and a different type. So we used to discuss a lot when I used to visit Tripura, the West Bengal model, the Kerala model, and how to apply in Tripura. Then we failed somewhere, we succeeded somewhere. So that's how the action research has been very useful in certain cases. It is having advantage over the other methods that we discussed.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I
Right.
got clarified. Yeah.
Thank you. We are already 5 minutes past 9. So if you have any last question, we take, else we can close for today. So Jesse, you have posted something there?
I've just posted the link for the journal in case someone wants. Professor Deb had recommended, and I think I got the book that Professor Sharath mentioned. I think I need to look at it.
Okay, good.
That is a very good book for starting, actually, madam. It is a very good book.
So in case someone
Okay,
wants,
so-
I'll just share the link.
For starting, that book is it is important. It is sufficient. Then, if you are going for more details, maybe other book will be. There are other books are available. For starting, understanding the terms, terminology, stock and flow, what Professor Rahul also mentions, with Kajal Reef, how do you develop the Kajal Reef? How do you keep plus symbol, minus symbol? All these things, that is a very nice book for understanding, initial understanding.
So can you please tell the name of the writer? That is Introduction to System Dynamics by
Modeling.
Nivedita, you can also request Professor Rahul Thakurta if you want a workshop. Professor Mahapatra is here only in Bhubaneswar. He will be more than happy to come and deliver, you know.
So I'll do, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great evening. I hope it was useful to most of you. We will put it up. There's so many references, so just put it up now. Was it one of you has put it up? So anyway, the recording will also be put up on the conference page, so you can refer to it. Yeah. Tina, you had something?
No, I was just saying thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all. Thank you,
Thank
Dave,
you.
and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all
Rahul,
for a very
Rathi.
lively discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.